Cents Per Mile, featuring Charles Gracie, Paul Gibson, and Josh Haynes. Everyone knows the trucking industry has issues, but most people are afraid to talk about it.
Someone's got to do it.
With loads of recruiting and marketing experience and backed by the largest driver audience in the world, we deliver carriers the driver perspective, find solutions, and help make sense make sense.
Thanks for tuning in to Cents Per Mile. I'm your host. Yeah, I'm your host, Paul Gibson.
And I'm Josh Haynes, sitting by myself. Where's Charles, Paul?
Well, so if you're watching this, we are at Matt's. Feel free to come up and say hi. Definitely catch us on Friday at one of the Pro Talks theaters. And, you know, this week we're getting ready. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up. It's going to be great. Charles is off getting ready doing that. And we're going to show a documentary for the other half of the podcast. One time I locked myself in a closet to show what it'd look like if office employees followed HOS rules. It's sort of like that time when you get that substitute teacher and they just show a movie and you're like, hell yeah, cool.
Yeah, you always knew it was going to be a banger of a day when the teacher wheeled in one of those like big screen TVs.
Mm-hmm. And the top was all like strapped down, so that way some like idiot kid didn't try to climb on it and knock it over.
100%. Anyways,
yeah.
Let's talk about our normal stuff.
All right, so the normal things. Yeah, so you can catch us on Apple Music, you can catch us on Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you could like, subscribe, rate, that actually gives us some more momentum, pushes us out a little bit further, so we can do some cooler stuff like we're doing at Matt's. Now, you can also go to centspermilepodcast.com. You can submit a topic. You can submit to be a guest. You can even submit to be a sponsor. Just like this week, our sponsor is TAFS from eCapital. And it's one of the coolest and best factoring companies out there. I know that sometimes that can seem a little sketch, but they are not. Know the dudes. I would actually vouch for them. They are wonderful people. And speaking of Matt's, they can also throw the heck of a party. So come say hi to them at Matt's this week too. But I think it's time to get into the news. All right, so it's time for 10-2 News, where we go look at CDLLife, find some of the coolest, some of the most interesting, and some of the most relevant articles from the past couple weeks. And obviously, the news is what it is. We talk about how the news is what it is all the time, and surprisingly, not surprisingly, today the conversation is about tariffs. So the CTA, the Canadian Trucking Alliance, actually put out a warning that these tariffs are actually starting to affect the supply chain in various ways. So essentially, there's 5,000 trucking companies in that alliance, and they're starting to run into cargo storage issues, and they're starting to have to rely on unscrupulous trucking companies to meet the increased demand. And Canadian truckers are also holding off on equipment acquisition and laying off workers, with more layoffs expected in the future. So this is something that we always knew when these were going to roll out, that it was going to affect the supply chain. And I believe that this is the beginning of a snowball effect. So that's definitely something that we will keep an eye on. But I guess Josh also has a story he wants to talk about that I don't think is political for once.
It's not, but it is terrifying. Speaking of tariff,
terrifying,
you know.
Oh,
right, now for real. All right, so I sent it to you. You can go and pull it up. This is the craziest story I've ever read, and I'm going to try to be as professional as I can reading through just the first paragraph. Okay, so a group of men...
What the hell is this?
A group of men were able to rob a Tennessee gas station of several $100s worth of merchandise by waving their pet pythons around. Now, this is a family show here. So let me just all right. By waving their pet pythons around. Dude, I can't make it.
Could you imagine? Like, I mean, I guess it really depends on like how scared of snakes you are. Like, I'm not like super huge on snakes. Like, if I see one, I'm not going to freak out. But like, if you try to hand me one, I'm going to be like, no, get away from me. So to come in, like, instead of a gun, or instead of just like your hand in your pocket, like, be like, give me all the money, you're just like, do you like snakes? No, give me the money, or I'm gonna wrap this thing around you. Like, what? Like, what is? What kind of? Who?
Where do you think they pulled the snakes out from?
I don't know, man. Like, you got what? You got? Like, you got a snake in your jacket? Like, is it like those old cartoons where like the guys had watches? Like, oh, you want to buy a snake? Fell off the back of a truck. Like, what is happening with that? Like, I will give it to them. Like, you want to talk about resourceful?
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of funny. They only grabbed $400 worth of CDL oil from the counter. That's let me double check, and probably intended to steal more, but were deterred by the number of people inside the store at the time. So apparently the snakes were terrifying, but not scary enough to scare multiple people. So with all that being done, the risk versus reward wasn't very good on that. It was just the first paragraph for me that got me, man.
Yeah. I mean, I guess with fuel prices, I don't know how much $400 worth of oil is, but like, that still seems like it would be enough to where that'd be kind of a pain in the butt to hold a snake, not get bit, and carry that out of the store. Or, like, and I mean, I feel like there's definitely a snake oil joke in there somewhere.
Oh, 100%. The fact that the copywriters didn't put snake oil in there, it was a missed opportunity.
But all right, well, that was your feel good story for the week. It is time for Behind the Desk.
At TAFS, we offer unparalleled trucking excellence and service. Enjoy exclusive benefits like fantastic tire discounts and 1-hour advances for quick cash. Recognized as the top factoring company in 2023, we're your partner for success. Access business loans, manage finances with ease through our client portal, F2 fuel card, and mobile app. Contact us now to see how we can help your trucking business thrive.
All right, so it's time to make sense. And as promised, bringing you a little nostalgia of having a substitute teacher, we are going to show this documentary. And we made it. We're in it. And it really was just, I decided for 48 hours to work out of a storage closet here in the office and show what it would look like if an office employee had to follow hours of service like a driver does. Now, there's some things that, I couldn't help, and couldn't replicate that are, brought up in the documentary. But the idea is the same. Is like, it's one of those things you can't really compare the way that you work versus the way that a driver works. It's two different situations. And I think one of the things that could help this industry is having a little bit more empathy and a little bit more understanding across the board. So check it out.
That's rolling. So first things first, you want to tell me how you feel?
That was absolutely exhausting. That was ridiculous, and everything hurts. My brain is just foggy. I don't know how anyone could follow that kind of schedule.
Hey everybody, my name is Paul Gibson. For the next 48 hours, I'm going to live in this storage closet to prove a point of what it would actually look like if office employees followed hours of service. So this would be the equivalent of the front of my cab, and this is my sleeper. So I'm using the Motive app, which used to be called Keep Trucking, and we're going to go ahead and go into on duty status and get this whole thing set up.
What is hours of service?
So basically, hours of service, goes a long way back, and it's changed over the years, but it's the idea that basically, if you're not a driver or, you're not somebody familiar with it, essentially, like, drivers are set up to where they can only drive so many hours a day. They can only work so many hours a day. So, for instance, let's say an over-the-road driver has a 70-hour work week. Every day, they have 11 hours where they can drive. They have up to 3 hours where they can be on duty. But, in like a situation where, let's say they're stuck at a customer for 4 hours instead of the 3, now they only have 10 hours to drive because it all has to fit within a 14-hour window. And after that 14 hours, they have to be off for at least 10. And at somewhere within 11 hours before they hit 8 hours, they have to take a 30-minute break.
So I think we're set up. Here is my work setup. This would be the equivalent of my driver's seat. Here is all of my suitcase and clothes and toiletries and a lot of that. And here is the tiny room which I will be sleeping in. And this is my producer Josh. He is here to help set up the workspace ring cam.
What is the experiment?
What I do for a living, I interact with drivers a lot and trucking companies in general and people who work in the back end of the industry, and there's always the common, like, when an OTR driver is expected to be out 3 weeks, there's always a lot of talk of, well, you work hard, that's why you get paid, but then a lot of, like, we work long hours in the office too, and that just, it didn't quite seem like apples and apples. So I decided to see what it would look like if an office employee tried to keep the same schedule and operated in the same way that a driver did.
All right, sir.
All right, man. Well,
See you in 2 days.
yeah, I'll see you in 2 days.
Make sure you lock the door.
All right, let's do this. It is drive time.
So obviously it's not the same as being in the cab of a truck. What are the trade-offs of doing this in the office?
Well, so there's a few trade-offs. Let's start with some of the benefits of being in an office. When drive time's winding down, I don't have to worry about finding somewhere to stop. I've just already stopped. It's a storage closet. It's not moving. And I don't have to worry about parking, which is a huge element of something that drivers have to deal with. Also, no one is governing my internet speed or how fast my computer can go. On the other hand, being in a storage closet, there's no windows, and I'm sitting up against cabinets, so there's not the leg room that you would have in a truck.
So tell us about the 1 hour check-in.
All right, so it's been a little bit. Gonna check in and see how long we've been doing this for.
So I hit 1 hour. That was a pretty defining moment for me on how this was gonna go.
Oh, okay, so it's only been 1 hour. That felt like a lot longer than that, so this should definitely get pretty interesting.
How were you feeling at the 5 hour check-in?
So after about 5 hours, I was already feeling it in my body. I had started to realize, like, how much office employees actually move around. Everybody's like, oh, you just sit in a chair and stare out a window. It's like how hard that is on your body to actually sit in a chair for that amount of time. Not to mention, mine didn't vibrate, so I was convinced that, it wouldn't be as bad as driving a truck, because in my experience with everything vibrating, your legs turn to jello. I stood up. My legs were solid, but, basically everything popped.
All right, so we are 5 hours and 1 minute in. I am going to take my 30, even though I've got another 6 hours of drive time left to go. So we'll see what that looks like. Yeah, sitting still for this long in a chair sucks. Since we're on a break, gonna go in and see how Josh is doing. What's up, dude?
What's up, man?
What about the 30-minute break? Did it feel like it was enough time or not enough time?
30 minutes is not a lot of time, especially, you know, if you're stopped and you're also getting fuel and that kind of thing. It was 30 minutes was not a lot in the middle of 11 hours.
All right, 30-minute break is pretty much come to an end. I'm headed back to the closet.
So did you know those Ring cameras had alarms built into them?
You're an asshole.
Rude.
So at 7 hours, you know, kind of like I said, you know, at 5 hours I was feeling it. At 7 hours I was feeling it even more. So I decided to start reaching out to some of my driver friends for some tips. Like I reached out to my friend John. You know, he's been driving for a long time, and I was like, hey, you know, what do you do in the seat to help, you know, with your knees and your legs hurting and stuff? And he had a few different stretches, like, you know, putting weight on the balls of your feet to stretch out your calves. He said sometimes, you know, like he might, like, you know, kind of move his hip out a little bit, you know, shift in the seat as much as possible. The last tip he gave me was kind of just really struck me. His last tip was, honestly, sometimes I just turn up the radio and tune it out and wait to feel it when I park.
This is terrible. There's no wonder why drivers live on average 16 years less than most other people.
About 9:30 was when I called it, I believe, that first day. It was pretty surreal, stepping out of that closet and everybody in the office is gone. The only people that were around were the cleaning people. You know, stepped outside, you know, had a smoke, enjoyed the night air. It wasn't too cold, but man, my body was on fire.
Normally at this point I'd probably be at home, you know, already tucked the kids into bed and, you know, getting ready to lay down next to my wife, you know, watch some TV, something like that. But here we are. I just got off. You know, working these hours every day, that's insane. That's absolutely insane. Obviously, you can take a shorter day, but, you know, that's where it gets weird, because if you want to get the miles, you got to work the hours. But also, if you work the hours, that's insane.
Sorry.
Day two rolls around. How are you feeling at this point?
For being honest, I feel like I slept on an air mattress in a closet after working 14 hours. It was crazy. I went to bed. There was no one in the office except for some cleaning people, you know, which, you know, the vacuuming, you know, kind of made it feel like I imagine somewhat what it's like sleeping, you know, with a reefer running behind you. But it was a pretty weird sensation feeling that alone, like in a place that's normally inhabited by people.
So we had a couple meetings on day two that we could not reschedule. How did you work around that?
Well, I went on duty. The crazy thing about that, though, that I really started to think about that is most drivers are paid per mile. The vast, vast majority. As an office employee, could you imagine like having to clock out essentially to go to a meeting and not get paid for it? Or have your salary docked because you're in a meeting and you're not at your desk performing your primary function?
So I'm supposed to be working on videos, but I kind of started going down a rabbit hole, you know, because, you know, just like when you're driving, you're out there and you're by yourself, you start thinking about things. I've really started to like kind of put some things together that are really kind of bugging me. And that's why I've been going down this rabbit hole and doing some research. And I think what I find might not be quite what I was looking to find.
So one of the things that really got me going kind of down, you know, the rabbit hole was when I had talked to Charles the day prior, and he explained to me that you could take an additional rest break if you wanted to. I realized hours of service wasn't as constrictive as I thought it was. So the first person that I called, you know, was Tony Boswell. He is a former owner-operator who has since got out of the industry right around the time when ELDs happened.
Do you think with the way that hours of service are set up, and then combine that with being paid per mile, do you think that that incentivizes drivers to drive fatigued or at points to where it doesn't work with their sleep?
Absolutely. And that's why I say if you pay him a salary, they'll follow the hours of service. You pay a driver a salary, he makes the same salary every single week. And the only time he gets increases is based on his bonus structure. That will get him to follow the safety rules. That will get him to follow the hours of service. Because he knows if he drives safely, he follows the hours of service, he doesn't get a speeding ticket, he's still making the same amount of money, but he's being incentivized now to do it safely.
So Tony had kind of confirmed what I was thinking, that hours of service really isn't that constricted. And I started to realize they get paid per mile. And they only get paid when they're driving. As a driver, you're going to do everything you possibly can to move for as much of that 11 hours as you can. But the way that it has progressed now, with hours of service, coupled with that, neither of those things are bad by themselves. But I've started to realize the relationship between the two is pretty toxic.
I'm about to have a phone call with Matt Bowerman of Bowerman Trucking. They pay their drivers, their OTR drivers, salary. They don't do by mile at all. Definitely got some questions about what that looks like for them from a safety standpoint. You pay your over-the-road driver's salary?
Yes.
All right, so how's that work?
Drivers have expressed to me is that they are able to kind of relax. It's been instilled in them because they've been historically paid by the mile. It's been instilled in them to hurry up and wait. So they're always on this in their mind. They're set on go, 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 go. I gotta go. I can't be sitting still. I gotta go. That's stressful.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our drivers have expressed to me that they are able to actually relax and be more focused and intentional with their driving and their use of the equipment, and actually kind of enjoy the job again instead of be stressed out all the time.
So after talking to Matt, it kind of really started to confirm the way I was feeling and what I was thinking, kind of putting things together and help me realize I'm not crazy. The fact that he has drivers who have openly expressed to him they're able to be more relaxed because they're not fighting that clock. They feel like they can be safer. The fact that he has drivers that, despite all the crap that everybody talks on speed governors and how I think it's a terrible idea and it's unsafe in traffic, which I still very much feel like, the fact that he has drivers who have the ability to go faster, but will set their cruise at 65 and just keep in the right lane because they don't have to switch lanes. They don't have to work through traffic. They don't have to go extra fast to make up lost time. They're actually being safer because they don't have to worry about getting in the maximum number of miles.
So I am at about 10 hours and 45 minutes, but I'm going to DoorDash something and hang out outside for a minute.
Day 2, it's over. Finally at an end. How are you feeling?
Went outside. There wasn't anybody in the office again, just like it had been, which was super weird. I also started to do some math, obviously with a calculator at that point because my brain was fried.
If a company driver making the median average had 2 perfect days for the amount of time that I was on drive time, and I would have just worked my typical 8 hours both days, I would have came out on top. I would have made more money. That's disgusting. What else is disgusting is if I would have only got paid for my drive time, I would have only gotten half of my salary.
You know, and those numbers are with a driver in a perfect world, which we all know we don't live in. Everybody wants to say, you know, drivers are the backbone of America. Drivers are everything. You know, without them, they'd have nothing. Well, as an industry, we're crapping on them. Like, they are getting the short end of the stick. The whole thing's kind of a joke. A really bad joke.
What is your takeaway from all this?
Not what I thought, that's for sure. Honestly, the whole thing seems like it might be kind of rigged. Initially, I thought the takeaway was going to be drivers keep a way harder, way more intense schedule than office employees. Despite being focused on hours of service, it really is more about a combination of that and getting paid. You know, hours of service is flexible. So if you go to just attack hours of service and say, hey, we need to change, you know, which has happened a little bit, you know, like they're going back and forth on like sleeper berths and what splits are acceptable. But ultimately it is flexible enough that there's not really a good argument in a vacuum to fight hours of service. With cents per mile, it's kind of hard to make the argument to change it because it's the way it's always been done. People are used to it, and it's just become a necessary evil. And it's hard to fight that by itself. But ultimately, all of these things both these things put together create this terrible, awful work environment. But in order to change one thing, you'd have to make the argument to change everything, and completely flipping the transportation industry on its head. You know, I don't know if it looks like going salary, or finding a different way to pay, or getting lanes where a driver doesn't have to destroy themselves to get where they're going. But it's going to take changing multiple things to make it work. And I have a hard time seeing that happen. But there are solutions. And if our industry really does give a shit about drivers, we should probably do better.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. With that being said, if you do miss Charles, he'll be running around Matt's. So will we. Check us out. We'll be there. And the next couple weeks, that's probably what the show's going to be, is our coverage of the amazing time that we are having. But until then, I am your host, Paul Gibson. I'll see you next time.